I stood in Derek Thornton's office, barely hearing his words. "We need new perspectives," he said. "After 18 years. 18 years of 100-hour weeks of building this company from 12 employees to 300. Security was already waiting outside his door. They handed me a cardboard box for my desk. I walked past the conference room where my former team suddenly found their phones fascinating. I had given everything to this medical software company. Now I was being erased like I never existed. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel in the parking lot. I could not drive yet, could not process what had just happened. The cardboard box sat in the passenger seat, like evidence of a crime. Inside were 18 years of my life reduced to a coffee mug, a framed photo of my team at our first product launch, and a small potted plant that was probably already dying. I stared at the building through my windshield. 4th floor corner office. That had been mine until 20 minutes ago. I remembered my first day here. I was employee number 12. Derek and I were both so young, then both so hungry. We worked until 3 in the morning designing our flagship product. We ate cold pizza and dreamed about changing healthcare technology. He promised me we were partners. He promised me this was our company. I missed my sister's wedding for a product launch. I worked through Christmas for 5 straight years. I turned down job offers that would have doubled my salary because Derek said we were building something special together. He said loyalty mattered. He said I was essential. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made me look. Jennifer. She still worked there, managed executive communications. The message was short. They forwarded the company-wide email to my personal account by mistake. You need to see this. I opened the attachment with trembling fingers. Mandatory executive retreat in 3 days at the Mountainside Resort in Aspen. All shareholders invited. Exciting announcement about the company's future direction. My stomach turned. Then Jennifer's next text arrived. They are selling the company. Derek has been in talks for months. I am so sorry. I sat there as the sun moved across the parking lot. Then I started going through the box more carefully. Under the coffee mug, I found my employment contract. Under that, my stock certificates. I had almost forgotten about those. 6 years ago, when we took the company public, Derek convinced me to take equity instead of a market rate salary. He said it would make me rich someday. I had agreed because I believed in us. I pulled out my phone and started calculating. I owned 4.7% of the company. It did not sound like much, but I started researching the shareholder structure. Derek owned 9%. The founding venture capital firm owned 32%. The rest was distributed among employees and small investors. I kept reading and realized something that made my heart beat faster. I was the largest minority shareholder after Derek and the VC firm. I drove home in a daze and opened my laptop. The SEC filings were public record. I found the preliminary merger discussions buried in the quarterly reports. The buyer was MedTech Solutions, a massive healthcare conglomerate. I knew their reputation. They acquired smaller companies and gutted them. Bought the technology, fired, the staff absorbed the patents. The purchase price made me gasp $211 million. I did the math 3 times to make sure. My 4.7% would be worth almost $10 million. But that was not what made my hands shake. It was the shareholder voting requirements. For a merger to pass, they needed 75% shareholder approval. Derek plus the VC firm only had 41% together. They needed my vote. The doorbell rang at 8 in the evening. I was not expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a courier in uniform holding a large envelope. I signed for it with numb fingers. The return address was Derek's personal attorney. Inside was a formal offer to purchase my shares. $12 million. Premium over the market value. The letter was personally signed by Derek. There was a deadline 48 hours before the retreat. I read it twice, then started laughing. The sound came out harsh and bitter in my empty apartment. He fired me this morning, hoping I would be too hurt and angry to think clearly. Then he planned to buy me out cheap before I realized what my shares were worth, before I understood that he needed me. For the first time since walking out of that building, I smiled. They were scared. I called my attorney at 7 in the morning. Harold Patterson had handled my contracts and personal legal matters for a decade. He agreed to meet me immediately at his office downtown. I brought everything: stock certificates, employment contracts, the buyout offer, every document I could find. Harold spread the papers across his conference table and studied them through his reading glasses. He was in his 60s, methodical and careful. After 30 minutes, he looked up at me. "Your shares carry full voting rights. They cannot force you to sell. They cannot complete the merger without sufficient shareholder approval." His voice was calm, but his eyes were serious. "But Macy, you need to understand what you are getting into. Corporate warfare gets ugly. These people have resources you do not." "I know," I said, "but they fired me yesterday and tried to buy me out today. What happens if I do nothing?" "Then they win. They get their merger, their money, and you get whatever they decide to give you." He tapped the buyout offer. "This is actually generous. $12 million would change your life. What about the 300 people who still work there? What happens to them?" Harold removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Based on MedTech's history, most will be gone within 6 months. That is what acquirers do. They eliminate redundancies." My phone rang. "Derek." I showed Harold the screen. He nodded and I answered on speaker. "Macy." Derek's voice was smooth, friendly, like he had not destroyed my life yesterday. "I hope you received my offer. I wanted to discuss it with you personally." "I got it." "Good. Look, I know yesterday was difficult, but this is business. We need to make strategic moves for the company's future. This merger is good for everyone. You will make a fortune." "By tomorrow morning, I need your answer," Derek said, and his voice had changed. It was colder now. "Be reasonable. Do not let emotions cloud your business judgment. I am willing to go up to 13.5 million. But that offer expires at midnight tonight." "I will think about it," I said. "Do not overthink this, Macy." He paused. "Do not make an enemy of me." He hung up. Harold and I sat in silence for a moment. "That sounded like a threat," Harold said. It was. Over the next 24 hours, my phone never stopped ringing. Former colleagues called one after another. Sarah from Human Resources sounded concerned. "I heard you are thinking about blocking the merger. People are saying you want revenge for being fired. That is not fair to everyone else who will benefit from this." Daniel from Sales was more direct. "Everyone is counting on this buyout for their stock options. Some people have kids in college. Do not be selfish." The emails started arriving anonymously. Bitter, vindictive, trying to sabotage the company out of spite. I deleted them, but they kept coming. I could not sleep that night. At 2 in the morning, I sat at my laptop and started digging deeper into the merger documents. I still had access to some shared drives. IT had not locked me out yet. I found the detailed terms buried in attachments to board meeting minutes. What I saw made me sick. Derek was getting a $35 million executive retention bonus as part of the deal. The VC firm had negotiated special terms, giving them a premium price per share higher than what regular shareholders would receive. But employees and minority shareholders like me got standard market rate. Derek stood to make $44 million personally when you added his bonus to his shares. He was getting rich while everyone else got crumbs. At 3 in the morning, my email pinged. Derek's attorney. A formal letter. If I did not sell by 9 a.m., they would pursue all legal remedies available. They would claim I was breaching my fiduciary duty to other shareholders by blocking a profitable merger for personal reasons. They would tie me up in litigation for years. The legal fees would bankrupt me. I forwarded everything to Harold. At 7 a.m., Jennifer texted me. "Can we meet?" "It is important. Not at a coffee shop near work. Somewhere else." We met at a diner 30 minutes outside the city. Jennifer looked terrified. She kept checking over her shoulder. When she sat down, she slid a folder across the table. I found these in Derek's email. I manage his calendar and communications. He does not know I saw them. Her hands were shaking. Macy, you have to stop this merger. I opened the folder. Inside were printed emails. I started reading and felt cold spread through my chest. Derek had been planning this for months. But it was not just about selling the company. There was an email to the MedTech acquisition team. After merger closes, we will need to make the company more efficient. I am recommending we eliminate all employees over 50. Expensive legacy staff. Macy was the test case. Clean exits. I counted quickly. There were 37 employees over 50, people who built this company, people with decades of experience. Keep reading, Jennifer whispered. The next email laid out the real plan. MedTech was not buying us to grow the company. They were buying us to shut us down. Their competing product had lost FDA approval 6 months ago. They were eliminating their competition. Within a year, our entire operation would be absorbed and 300 jobs would disappear. This is corporate murder, I said. Jennifer nodded. Derek gets $44 million and walks away. MedTech gets rid of their competitor. Everyone else loses everything. She leaned forward. But Macy, there is more. He knows you have been accessing the company's systems. He is planning to have you arrested at the retreat if you show up. He has already filed a report claiming you are hacking confidential files. He is setting a trap. I pushed the folder back across the table. Why are you telling me this? You could lose your job. I already did. She smiled sadly. He fired me this morning, said he was restructuring communications. I think he knows I am the leak. We sat there in that diner booth, 2 women who had given everything to a company that threw us away. I looked at the emails again, then I made my decision. I am going to that retreat, I said, and I am going to stop him. Harold thought I was insane. He said it at least 5 times on the drive to Aspen. Macy, if Derek has set up a legal trap, walking into it is the worst possible thing you can do. But I am still a shareholder. I have a right to attend shareholder meetings. This retreat includes the merger vote. He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. We had driven through the night to get here. I have documentation of your legitimate access to those files. Jennifer gave you that information willingly. The computer fraud charges will not stick, but the process is the punishment. They will arrest you, hold you, make you miss the vote. Then we make sure that does not happen. The mountainside resort appeared as we rounded a curve in the mountain road. It was one of those luxury places where tech executives held strategic planning sessions and called them work. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-capped peaks, massive timber beams and stone fireplaces, probably cost more per night than most people made in a month. Cars filled the parking lot. I recognized vehicles belonging to senior employees. The VC firm's partners had arrived in a black SUV, and there, parked right by the entrance, was Derek's silver Tesla. We walked through the massive wooden doors into the lobby. People turned to stare. Conversations stopped. Someone whispered. Harold stayed close to my side, his lawyer briefcase in hand like a shield. Sarah from HR approached us with a forced smile. Macy, we did not expect you to attend. I am a shareholder. This is a shareholder meeting. Her smile tightened. Of course, the meeting is in the grand ballroom. It starts in 30 minutes. She walked away quickly, already pulling out her phone. Security guards appeared, 2 of them in suits with earpieces. They did not approach us, but they watched. I felt their eyes following me as Harold and I made our way to the ballroom. The room was enormous. Rows of chairs faced a raised stage with a projection screen. Maybe 150 people were there. Employees who owned stock options, small investors, board members. The VC firm's partners sat in the front row, 3 men in expensive suits. And there was Derek on the stage, talking to the MedTech executives. He looked confident, relaxed. He saw me and his expression flickered for just a second. Surprise, then anger, then back to confidence. He whispered something to the man next to him. That must be Richard Hayworth, MedTech's CEO. Tall, silver-haired, probably in his late 50s. Harold and I found seats near the back. People around us moved away subtly. No one wanted to be associated with me. I was the problem. The obstacle. The bitter ex-employee trying to ruin everyone's windfall. The lights dimmed. Derek walked to the podium. He looked like a hero up there, backlit by the mountain view through the massive windows. Thank you all for coming. Today is a historic moment for our company. He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him lit up with the company logo. We have built something incredible together. From 12 employees in a rented office to 300 talented people creating technology that saves lives. And now we have an opportunity to take this to the next level. The presentation was slick. Graphics showing market expansion, numbers that made people gasp. The purchase price $211 million. What that meant for stock options. How much money people would make. Some employees would clear 6 figures. Life-changing money for most of them. Derek introduced Richard Hayworth. The MedTech CEO talked about synergies and strategic vision. He made it sound wonderful. A partnership of equals, unlimited resources to grow the technology. Everything everyone wanted to hear. Then came the Q&A session. People asked softball questions. When does the money arrive? What about vesting schedules? Will there be retention bonuses? I stood up. The room went quiet. Derek saw me, and his jaw tightened. Yes, Macy. I have a question about post-merger employment plans. That will be determined based on business needs, he said quickly. Next question. Specifically, I continued raising my voice. What are the plans for employees over 50? Derek's smile stayed fixed. Personnel decisions will be made by the combined leadership team based on operational efficiency. He started to move on. Is it true you are planning to fire everyone over 50 the day after closing? The room erupted. People turned in their seats. Derek's face flushed red. That is absurd. Where did you hear such a ridiculous claim? From your own emails. I held up the folder Jennifer had given me. You wrote, and I quote, eliminate all employees over 50. Expensive legacy staff. Macy was the test case. Clean exits. You have been illegally accessing confidential company files, Derek said, his voice rising. He pointed at me. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman has violated federal computer fraud laws. She hacked our systems after being terminated. She stole proprietary information. I did not hack anything. I accessed shared drives I had legitimate access to and was given information by a current employee. An employee you convinced to betray the company? Derek turned to address the room. This is why we need new perspectives. This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that holds companies back. He turned back to me. And by the way, Macy, while we are discussing transparency, let us talk about your compensation package. Should I tell everyone how much you are making by holding this merger hostage? I am not holding anything hostage. I am asking legitimate questions as a shareholder. Like, why are you personally receiving a $35 million retention bonus that no one else in this room knew about until now? More gasps. People started talking. The VC partners in the front row shifted uncomfortably. That is standard executive compensation, Derek said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. The board approved it. Did they know you plan to shut down the company completely? Did they know MedTech lost FDA approval for their competing product, and they are buying us just to eliminate competition? That is enough, Derek shouted. He pointed at the security guards. This woman has made illegal, unauthorized access to confidential files. She violated her separation agreement. Her shares are now in question per the shareholder agreement clause about illegal conduct. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. More security entered, and behind them, 2 police officers in uniform. My heart started pounding. Harold grabbed my arm. This is what he planned. The trap. The police officers walked down the aisle toward me. Everyone was staring. Derek spoke into the microphone, his voice calm again. As I mentioned, we have a situation involving computer fraud. The authorities have been investigating. Ma'am, one officer said as they reached my row. We have a warrant for your arrest. On what charges? Harold stood up, putting himself between me and the officers. Unauthorized access to computer systems. Corporate espionage. She is wanted for questioning. I can explain, I started to say, but Harold shook his head sharply. Do not say anything. Not one word. The officer pulled out handcuffs. I felt them click around my wrists. Cold metal. Real. This was actually happening. Around me, people pulled out their phones, recording. I saw the shock and satisfaction on Derek's face. Due to her illegal actions, Derek announced to the room, and due to her breach of the shareholder agreement, her shares will be placed in company custody pending legal resolution. We will proceed with the vote. Harold was arguing with the police, showing them documents, but they ignored him. They led me up the aisle in handcuffs. Everyone watched. I tried to hold my head up, tried to look strong, but inside I was screaming. As we reached the doors, I heard Derek's voice on the microphone. Now, if there are no further interruptions, let us proceed with the vote on the merger. All those in favor. The doors closed behind me and I could not hear the rest. The police led me outside to their car. Harold followed, still arguing. I looked back at the resort one more time and saw through the windows. The room full of people. The vote happening without me. Derek had won. The Aspen police station was small. 4 cells, 2 officers on duty. A front desk that smelled like coffee and paperwork. They processed me like I was a real criminal. Fingerprints. Mugshot. Empty my pockets. Sign here. I felt numb through all of it. The cell was clean at least. A bench, a sink, a toilet. Bars on one side. I sat on the bench and stared at my hands. The ink from the fingerprinting was still on my fingers. Harold was somewhere in the building arguing with someone. I could hear his voice rising and falling, but not the words. My phone and belongings were in a plastic bag at the front desk. I had no way to know what was happening at the resort. No way to know if the vote had already happened. If Derek had already won. I thought about the last 18 years. All those nights working until dawn. All those weekends in the office. All those birthdays and holidays and family events I missed. For what? To end up in a jail cell while the man I helped build an empire laughed at me. My sister Lisa used to beg me to visit, to take a vacation, to just spend one weekend together. I always said next month, next quarter, after this product launch. I miss so much. And for what? The hours crawled by. They brought me a sandwich at lunch. I could not eat it. I kept replaying Derek's face on that stage. The satisfaction in his eyes as they handcuffed me. He had planned every detail. He was always 3 steps ahead. Maybe Harold was right. Maybe I should have taken the $12 million. Started over. At least then I would have something. Now I had nothing. No job, no money, no leverage. Just criminal charges and a destroyed reputation. The light changed as afternoon turned to evening. I watched shadows move across the cell floor. In my mind, I kept seeing the emails Jennifer showed me. 37 people over 50. 300 jobs gone. Also, Derek could make $44 million. But what could I do about it? I was locked in a cell. The vote had happened by now. The merger was approved. Derek had won, and I had lost. Around 9 p.m., I heard familiar voices. Harold was back, talking to the officer at the front desk. Negotiations. Legal terms. I could not make out the details, but his voice sounded encouraged. Hopeful. The officer appeared at my cell 30 minutes later. You are free to go. Charges are being dropped. What? Your lawyer explained the situation. You had legitimate access to those files. The prosecutor reviewed the evidence and declined to press charges. She opened the cell door. You can collect your belongings at the front desk. Harold was waiting for me in the lobby. He looked exhausted. I got you out, but Macy, the damage is done. The vote happened. The merger passed with what Derek claims is sufficient majority. My shares. He claimed they did not count because of the criminal charges. But now that the charges are dropped, that argument falls apart. However, the vote already happened. He handed me my phone and bag. I am sorry. We stood there in that small police station lobby. Through the window, I could see the mountains in the distance, dark shapes against the starry sky. Everything felt impossibly heavy. I need to know something, I said. Fighting this. Trying to overturn the vote. Is there any realistic chance? Harold hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Maybe. The charges being dropped so quickly undermines their justification for excluding your shares. If we can prove the vote was improper, we could potentially get an injunction. But Macy, it will cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. You do not have that kind of money. And even if you did, they have unlimited resources to fight you for years. You could spend everything and still lose. So, I should give up. I am saying you should be realistic. These are billionaires with armies of lawyers. The smart play now is to negotiate a settlement, get what you can, and walk away. We drove to a hotel near the police station. Harold had booked us rooms. I lay on the bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed with messages. Most were from unknown numbers. Reporters wanting comments. A few were from former colleagues telling me to give up, that I was hurting everyone. One was from Lisa. Just checking in. I love you. Call me when you can. I had not called her, had not even thought to. Some sister I was. Sleep would not come. My mind kept racing through everything. The timeline, the merger vote, the shareholder agreement, Derek's presentation. Something bothered me about the numbers, but I could not pin it down. Around 2 a.m. I sat up. The merger paperwork said closing would happen in 90 days. But there was a mandatory 60-day period where shareholders could contest the vote. And my shares had not actually been legally invalidated. They were just frozen pending the investigation. Now that the charges were dropped, the freeze should lift automatically. If my shares were valid, and if the vote count was wrong without them, then the merger did not actually have the required 75% approval. I grabbed my laptop and started calculating. Derek and the VC firm had 41% combined. They needed an additional 34% from other shareholders to reach 75%. I started listing everyone who attended the meeting, what their holdings were, how they likely voted. The numbers were close, very close. If even a few small shareholders had voted no or abstained, the vote might not have reached the threshold. But I needed proof. I needed to see the actual vote count, and that was locked in company records I definitely did not have access to anymore. Morning came. Harold knocked on my door at 7. I had not slept. I showed him my calculations. He studied them, then nodded slowly. If you are right, if the vote was actually close, there is a path forward. But we need evidence. We need to see how the vote actually broke down. How do we get that? He thought for a moment. There are ways, legal discovery. But that takes time and they will fight it. He looked at me carefully. Macy, I am going to be honest with you. Fighting this could cost you everything. Your savings, your future, your peace of mind. They will destroy you financially. They will ruin your reputation. Derek will make sure you never work in this industry again. Is it worth it? I thought about those 37 people over 50. I thought about the 300 jobs. I thought about what I had sacrificed to build that company and what Derek was willing to sacrifice to get rich. Yes, I said, it is worth it. There was a knock at the door. We both froze. Harold looked through the peephole, then turned to me with a confused expression. It is Jennifer. I opened the door. Jennifer stood there looking terrified but determined. She was holding a laptop bag. They fired me, she said. Locked me out of everything. But before they did, I printed some files. She came inside and set the laptop bag on the table. Financial records, shareholder proxies, vote tallies. She started pulling out documents, and I found something else, something big. What? She spread papers across the table. These are shareholder proxies, the official votes submitted by people who could not attend in person. She pointed to several. These 12 proxies are forgeries. How do you know? I processed the original proxy submissions. These are not the same. The signatures are wrong. The dates are wrong. Someone created fake votes. She pulled out more papers showing the originals compared to what was submitted for the official count. Together, these 12 shareholders own 8.2% of the company. Harold was studying the documents. If these are forged, if someone fraudulently created 8.2% of votes, then the merger vote was invalid. It gets worse, Jennifer said. I found an email thread between Derek and the VC firm. They knew they were short on votes. They knew they needed your shares or they needed to create votes from somewhere else. So they forged these proxies, excluded your shares based on the bogus criminal charges, and pushed through a fraudulent vote. She sat down heavily. I just got fired for helping you. Derek is going to come after me too. But I could not let him get away with this. All those people are going to lose their jobs because he wants to get rich. Harold was already on his phone. I need to call our litigation team. If we can prove this, if we can prove the vote was fraudulent, we can get an emergency injunction to stop the merger. He looked at me. But Macy, this is where it gets dangerous. When we file this, Derek is going to go nuclear. He will come after you with everything he has. Then let him come, I said. We have the truth. But I had no idea how bad it was about to get. Harold brought in reinforcements. Thomas Wright was a corporate litigation specialist, late 40s, with a reputation for taking on impossible cases. He reviewed Jennifer's documents for 6 hours straight in a conference room Harold rented at a law office in Denver. This is actionable, Thomas finally said. These proxies are clearly forged. Different paper stock, different ink signatures, submission dates that do not match the originals. Any forensic analysis will confirm it. He spread out more papers. And you are right about the math. 8.2% in fraudulent votes. Without those, the merger does not reach the 75% threshold required by the shareholder agreement. So we can stop it, I asked. We can try. Thomas leaned back. We file an emergency injunction, alleging fraud, forged documents, and conspiracy. We request a formal SEC investigation. We demand the vote be invalidated. He looked at me seriously. But you need to understand what happens next. They will come after you with everything they have. This is going to get ugly. How ugly? He will destroy your reputation, file countersuits, tie you up in litigation for years, try to bankrupt you with legal fees, and that is just the legal attacks. There will be PR campaigns, leaked stories to the press, professional blackballing. You will become radioactive in your industry. I looked at Jennifer. She had already lost her job for helping me. I looked at Harold, who had been working around the clock. Everyone was sacrificing for this. Was I willing to do the same? File it, I said. File everything. The injunction went public on a Friday morning. Major news outlets picked it up by noon. Former executive alleges fraud in $211 million merger. The stock price went crazy, swinging wildly as traders tried to figure out what was happening. My phone started ringing nonstop. Reporters, lawyers, former colleagues. I turned it off. Derek's response came fast. By Monday, his legal team had filed a countersuit. $50 million in damages for defamation and tortious interference with business relationships. The complaint painted me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, making false allegations to sabotage a legitimate business transaction. But that was just the opening salvo. Tuesday, someone leaked my personnel file to a business journalist. It contained performance reviews I had never seen before. They claimed I had been underperforming for years, that I was difficult to work with, that multiple employees had complained about my management style. The article painted me as someone who had been lucky to keep my job as long as I did. I knew those reviews were fabricated. My real reviews had always been excellent. But proving that would be difficult. Wednesday, Harold called with worse news. Derek's team convinced a judge to freeze my assets pending the countersuit. Until it was resolved, I could not access my bank accounts or sell any assets. They claimed I might try to hide money or flee. I cannot pay my rent, I told Harold. I cannot pay for anything. I know. He sounded tired. We are fighting the asset freeze, but it will take time. How am I supposed to live? My sister Lisa drove down from Boulder that night. She found me sitting in my apartment surrounded by unpaid bills and legal documents. Without saying anything, she started packing my clothes. You are coming to stay with me, she said. Lisa, I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am telling you. She folded a sweater and put it in a suitcase. You are my sister. You should have called me days ago. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I have been a terrible sister. I missed your wedding. I missed everything. I chose that company over you, and now look where I am. She sat down next to me. You made mistakes, but you are fighting for something that matters now. You are fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. That is the sister I remember, the one who stood up to bullies in high school, the one who believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. I moved into Lisa's one-bedroom apartment in Boulder. She took the couch and gave me the bedroom. I tried to protest, but she would not hear it. Every morning I woke up on her bed, surrounded by her life, and felt like a failure. Thomas and Harold worked pro bono, but the forensic accountants and expert witnesses cost money I did not have. Thomas brought in favors from colleagues. Harold called in debts, but the bills kept mounting. Thursday morning, Derek's team made their final move. They sent a settlement offer through intermediaries. Drop all legal challenges. Sign a non-disclosure agreement. They would give me $5 million. Half of what my shares were originally worth. The alternative was spelled out clearly. If I refused, they would fight me for years. They had unlimited resources. I would die broke, buried under legal judgments. They would destroy me financially and personally. No company in healthcare technology would ever hire me again. I would be known as the crazy ex-employee who made false accusations and lost. Harold came to Lisa's apartment to deliver the offer in person. He sat across from me at her tiny kitchen table. Macy, I hate to say this, but you should seriously consider it. The SEC investigation could take years. We are burning through resources fighting the asset freeze. Thomas and I can only work pro bono for so long. $5 million would let you start over. What about the 300 people who are going to lose their jobs? He was quiet for a moment. Sometimes you have to save yourself. Lisa brought us coffee and sat down. She had been listening from the other room. How long does she have to decide? 3 days, Harold said. The offer expires Friday at 5 p.m. That gave me 72 hours to decide whether to give up or keep fighting a battle I would probably lose. I spent those days walking around Boulder, the university campus, the hiking trails, the downtown mall. Lisa worked during the day, so I was alone with my thoughts. I kept thinking about everything I had given up for that company. 18 years. My 20s and most of my 30s. Relationships, experiences, time with family. All for a place that fired me without a second thought. And now they were offering me money to go away quietly, to let them destroy 300 lives so Derek could get rich, to pretend none of this happened, to be complicit in the betrayal. I thought about the person I used to be, before the 100-hour weeks and the corporate ladder. I used to believe in fighting for what was right. When did I lose that? Friday morning came. The deadline was 5 p.m. Harold and Thomas were waiting for my decision. Lisa made breakfast, and we sat at her table not talking. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Hello. The voice on the other end was deep, measured, confident. Macy, this is Richard Hayworth, CEO of MedTech Solutions. I think we need to talk. I looked at Lisa. She could hear the surprise in my face. Why would you want to talk to me? Because I have been doing some investigating of my own, Richard said, and I have found some things that concern me. Things about Derek and the deal he presented to us. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Alone. I will come to Boulder. This could be a trap, I said. It could be. But I think we both might benefit from an honest conversation. I will text you the address. Please come. He hung up. Lisa was staring at me. Who was that? The buyer. The CEO of the company acquiring us. He wants to meet. Harold called 5 minutes later. He had heard somehow. Macy, do not meet with him. This could be a setup. They could be recording you, trying to get you to say something incriminating. Or, I said, maybe something is wrong on their end too. What do you mean? I mean, maybe Derek has been lying to both sides. Maybe Richard Hayworth is figuring that out. I looked at the clock. 2 hours until the settlement deadline. I am going to meet with him. And then I will make my decision. I texted Richard back. I would meet him tomorrow at 8 a.m. at a coffee shop downtown. Then I called Harold and Thomas. I need you to draw up papers declining the settlement offer. I am not giving up, Macy, Harold said. Are you sure? No, I admitted, but I am doing it anyway. That night, Lisa and I stayed up late talking. Really talking for the first time in years. She told me about her job teaching elementary school, about the man she was dating, about her life. I realized how much I had missed, how much I had sacrificed for a company that never valued me. What if this meeting with Richard changes nothing? I asked her. What if I am about to throw away $5 million for nothing? Then you are broke and living on my couch, she said. But at least you will know you tried. At least you will know you stood up for those 300 people. That has to count for something. At 7 the next morning, I walked to the coffee shop alone. It was a small place, locally owned, brick walls, and mismatched furniture. Richard Hayworth was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when I entered. He was tall, well-dressed, looked exactly like a CEO should look, but his eyes were troubled. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. I know you have no reason to trust me. No, I do not. He pulled out a folder. Fair enough. Then let me show you why I called. He opened it and turned it toward me. These are the documents Derek provided during our due diligence. Revenue projections. FDA approval timelines. Secured contracts. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. What do you mean? I have been doing acquisitions for 25 years. I know when numbers are too good to be true, so I had my team dig deeper. He pointed to specific pages. These FDA approvals, Derek said, were imminent. They are not. The applications have not even been submitted yet. These secured contracts, they are preliminary discussions at best. The revenue projections are based on market conditions that do not exist. You are saying he lied to you? I am saying he presented a version of reality that was optimistic, enough to make me question the entire deal. Richard leaned back. And then I hear about this legal challenge you filed, about forged proxies and fraud allegations. At first I thought you were a disgruntled employee making noise, but then I had my legal team actually review your claims. And they are credible, very credible. He closed the folder. So now I have a problem. I am about to spend $211 million on a company where the CEO may have committed fraud to push through the sale and who may have lied to me about the company's actual condition. That is not a position I want to be in. What are you going to do? That is what I wanted to talk to you about. He ordered coffee for both of us. The waitress brought them and left. Tell me the truth, Macy. All of it. Why were you really fired? What are Derek's actual plans? What is really going on with this company? So, I told him everything. the 37 people over 50, the plan to eliminate jobs, the real reason MedTech was buying us, which Derek had told me, but might not have told Richard, the forged proxies, the asset freeze, the pressure campaign. I held nothing back. Richard listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Derek told us this acquisition would give us your technology and your team, he finally said. That we were buying a thriving company with massive growth potential. He never mentioned eliminating employees. He never mentioned shutting down operations. Because he was lying to you too. Richard pulled out his phone. I need to make a call. May I put this on speaker? I nodded. He dialed a number. It rang 3 times. Walsh. The voice was curt, businesslike. Gregory, this is Richard Hayworth. I am here with Macy. We have just had a very interesting conversation. There was silence on the other end. Gregory Walsh was the managing partner at the VC firm that owned 32% of the company. I am listening, Gregory finally said. Your CEO has been lying to both of us, Richard said. He has committed securities fraud, possibly multiple counts. He falsified documents to push through a merger vote, and he misrepresented the company's condition to induce MedTech to overpay. If this merger goes through and the fraud comes out, your firm will face massive liability from your limited partners. More silence. But Richard continued, if you voluntarily stop the merger and remove Derek as CEO, you can claim you discovered the fraud and acted responsibly. You protect your firm's reputation. You avoid liability. And you can still salvage value from the company with honest leadership. What do you want from us? Gregory asked. I want you to call an emergency board meeting. Today, I want Derek removed as CEO. And I want Macy's shares recognized as valid so she can vote on any future decisions. Because frankly, she is the only one who has been telling the truth this whole time. I held my breath. The silence stretched out. There is an emergency shareholder meeting at the Mountainside Resort this afternoon at 2 p.m., Gregory finally said. It was already scheduled to finalize some merger paperwork. I will make sure the board is there. But Richard, if we do this, if we expose Derek's fraud, this could destroy the company's value. Maybe, Richard said. Or maybe it saves the company from being destroyed by a corrupt CEO. Either way, it is the right thing to do. I will see you this afternoon, Gregory said and hung up. Richard looked at me. I hope you are ready. This is going to be very public, very ugly. Derek is not going to go down quietly. I have lost everything already, I said. I have nothing left to be afraid of. He smiled slightly. That is what makes you dangerous. We spent the next several hours preparing. Richard called his legal team. Gregory called the other board members. I called Harold and Thomas, who raced to get to Aspen in time. Jennifer joined us via video call, providing more documentation. At 1 p.m., we drove to the resort, the same place I had been arrested a week ago. This time I was walking in with the CEO of the acquiring company and the support of the largest institutional shareholder. Everything had changed. The grand ballroom looked exactly the same. The same stage, the same chairs, the same mountain views through the massive windows. But this time the energy was completely different. People whispered and pointed as I walked in with Richard Hayworth. Derek was already on stage talking to MedTech executives. When he saw us together, his face went white. Richard walked straight to the front of the room, confident and commanding. I followed with Harold close behind. Gregory Walsh and the other VC partners were seated in the front row. The board members sat nearby, looking confused and concerned. Derek came down from the stage. Richard, what is going on? Why is she here? We need to talk, Richard said. Privately. Now. They moved to a side room off the ballroom. Through the glass wall, I could see Derek gesturing angrily, his face red. Richard stood calm, arms crossed. Gregory joined them. The argument lasted 10 minutes. Then Derek stormed out, slamming the door. He walked right past me without looking and left the ballroom entirely. Richard and Gregory came back to the main room. Richard nodded to me. It was time. Martha Brennan, the independent board member, called the emergency meeting to order. She was in her 70s, a veteran of the medical technology industry respected by everyone. She stood at the podium with a grim expression. "We have received serious allegations regarding the recent merger vote," she began. "Allegations of fraud, forged documents, and misrepresentation. This board has a fiduciary duty to investigate these claims thoroughly." Derek burst back into the room with two lawyers. "This is ridiculous. These are baseless accusations from a disgruntled employee who was fired for cause. She is trying to sabotage this merger out of spite." "Then you will not mind if we examine the evidence," Martha said calmly. She nodded to Harold, who stood up. Harold presented the forged proxies. He showed the originals side by side with what was submitted for the vote, the different paper, the different signatures, the impossible dates. An independent forensic analyst had examined them overnight and prepared a preliminary report. His conclusion: the proxies were definitely forged. Derek tried to dismiss it. These could have been administrative errors, honest mistakes. 12 identical mistakes, Harold asked. All favoring your position, all submitted from IP addresses, traced to company computers you control. Derek's lawyers whispered to him urgently. He ignored them. "This is a witch hunt. You are destroying shareholder value based on conspiracy theories." Then Richard stood. "I have more concerns than just the proxies." He addressed the room, his voice carrying authority. During due diligence, Derek provided projections and assurances about FDA approvals and secured contracts. My team has now verified these claims. They were false. He projected documents on the screen, FDA submission records showing nothing had been filed, emails from supposed partners saying no contracts had been finalized, financial records that did not match what Derek had presented. "You lied to me about the condition of this company," Richard said. "You inflated its value. You misrepresented its position. You induced MedTech to overpay by tens of millions of dollars." "That is your interpretation," Derek shot back. "Those were good faith projections." "Then explain this." Richard showed another document, an email from Derek to Gregory Walsh. "I can get MedTech to $211 million if we move fast. They do not know about the FDA issues yet. We need to close before they figure it out." The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other. Shareholders stood up demanding answers. Derek looked around, realizing he was losing control. Gregory Walsh stood. He was a large man, imposing with gray hair and cold eyes. He looked at Derek with obvious contempt. "I have reviewed all the evidence, the forged proxies, the misrepresentations to MedTech, the plans to eliminate employees that were never disclosed to this board." He turned to Martha. "I move that we invalidate the merger vote and remove Derek Thornton as CEO effective immediately." "This is insane," Derek shouted. "I built this company. I made all of you rich. You cannot do this." "Watch me," Gregory said. He looked at the other board members. "We need 4 votes. I vote yes to remove Derek. My firm's 2 board seats both vote yes. That is 3. Martha looked at the remaining board members. These were people Derek had appointed. His allies. They looked at each other uncertainly. "The evidence is clear," Martha said. "Derek has engaged in fraudulent activity. He has breached his fiduciary duty to shareholders. He has lied to this board repeatedly. I vote yes. That is 4. Derek Thornton is removed as CEO." Security appeared at the doors, the same security that had escorted me out in handcuffs. This time they were here for Derek. "You will regret this," Derek said, looking at each board member. "All of you. I will sue. I will destroy you." "You are welcome to try," Gregory said. "From prison, perhaps. Because I am also recommending we refer this matter to federal prosecutors for criminal fraud charges." Derek stood there, his world collapsing. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw rage and disbelief. "You did this? You destroyed everything." "No," I said quietly. "You did this I just refuse to let you get away with it. Security escorted him out. Unlike my perp walk, there were no handcuffs. Not yet. But everyone knew what was coming. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. And potentially his freedom was at risk. The room was chaos. People talking, arguing, demanding to know what happened next. Martha called for order and the room gradually quieted. "We need interim leadership," she said. "The company needs a CEO who understands the business and who shareholders trust." She looked at me. "I propose Macy for interim CEO while we conduct a proper search." What I stood up shocked. "Martha, I cannot." "Why not?" "You know this company better than anyone. You built it from the ground up. You risked everything to expose the truth. The employees respect you. The shareholders respect you. And most importantly, you have integrity." The vote happened quickly. The remaining board members freed from Derek's influence voted unanimously. I was named interim CEO. Richard approached me after the meeting. "I need to tell you something. MedTech is withdrawing our acquisition offer at the current price. Derek's fraud makes the deal untenable." My heart sank. "So the company gets nothing?" "I did not say that." He smiled slightly. "I said we are withdrawing at the current price, but we are still very interested in your technology. What if instead of acquiring you, we license your flagship product? You stay independent. We pay you royalties. We provide resources and market access. You keep your team. We both benefit." I stared at him. "You would do that?" "It is good business. Your product is valuable. Your team is talented. Without Derek sabotaging everything, you could actually fulfill the potential he lied about." He extended his hand. "What do you say?" I shook it. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Over the next 3 months, I learned what it meant to lead a company the right way. I promoted Jennifer to Vice President of Communications. I met with every employee and listened to their concerns. I restructured compensation to be more fair. I implemented transparent communication policies. And I kept every single one of those 37 employees over 50. In fact, I promoted 3 of them to senior positions. Their experience was invaluable. The licensing deal with MedTech brought in steady revenue. We hired more engineers. We expanded our product line. The stock price recovered and then grew beyond its previous highs. My 4.7% stake became worth more than the original buyout offer had been. But more importantly, we saved 300 jobs, 300 families that did not have to worry about where their next paycheck was coming from, 300 lives that were not destroyed by corporate greed. Derek faced criminal charges for securities, fraud, and conspiracy. His trial was scheduled for next year. He lost everything: his reputation, his money, his freedom. The FBI seized his assets to pay restitution to shareholders. I visited Lisa's apartment one last time before moving into my own place. She was cooking dinner in the tiny kitchen. "I cannot thank you enough," I said. "You gave me a place to stay when I had nothing. You believed in me when everyone else thought I was crazy. You are my sister. That is what family does." She hugged me. "Besides, you taught me something too. You taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what you are really made of." 6 months after that emergency board meeting, I stood in front of the entire company at our annual all-hands meeting. 300 faces looked back at me. These were people I had fought for, people who had been pawns in Derek's game, but were now building something real together. "I thought about giving you a typical CEO speech," I began, "numbers and projections and strategic initiatives, but instead I want to tell you what I learned." I told them about being fired, about the humiliation of being escorted out with my belongings in a box, about sitting in that jail cell thinking I had lost everything, about my sister's couch and frozen bank accounts and lawyers telling me to give up. "I was willing to accept $5 million and walk away," I said. "I was ready to let Derek win, because fighting seemed impossible. The odds were too long. The cost was too high. Everyone told me I would lose. I paused. But then I thought about all of you. About the 37 people Derek planned to fire just because they were over 50. About the 300 jobs that would have disappeared. About the families that would have been destroyed. And I realized something. I walked to the edge of the stage. Sometimes the odds do not matter. Sometimes the cost does not matter. Sometimes you fight because it is the right thing to do, even when everyone tells you it is impossible. You fight because somebody has to. You fight because surrendering means betraying everyone who believed in you. The room was completely silent. I learned that companies are not just numbers on a spreadsheet, I continued. They are people. They are families. They are communities. And when you forget that when you treat people as disposable assets, you lose everything that makes a company worth building in the first place. I looked out at the faces. Some people were crying. Jennifer was smiling. The employees over 50 who still had their jobs looked relieved and grateful. Derek tried to erase me, I said. He tried to erase my 18 years of work and sacrifice. He tried to make me feel worthless. But here is what he did not understand. My value was never about how much money I made or what title I held. My value was in standing up for what is right. My value was in refusing to let injustice win. I gestured to everyone in the room. And that is your value too. Every single one of you. You are not disposable. You are not line items in a budget. You are the reason this company exists. You are the reason we kept fighting. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood up. Some were crying, others were cheering. I felt tears in my own eyes. After the meeting, I walked through the office. The same office where I had been escorted out in shame 6 months ago. Now I stopped at desks and talked to people. Engineers showed me new features they were developing. Salespeople shared stories about happy customers. HR introduced me to new hires. This was what Derek never understood. Success is not about how much money you extract from a company. It is about what you build. It is about the people whose lives you improve. It is about creating something that matters. That evening, Lisa came to my new apartment for dinner. It was not much, just a one-bedroom place near downtown, but it was mine. I had bought it with my first CEO paycheck. We sat on the balcony overlooking the city. "Do you ever regret it?" Lisa asked. "All the pain and struggle?" I thought about it. Sometimes. When I was in that jail cell, definitely. When my bank accounts were frozen and I was living on your couch, absolutely. But I look at what we saved. 300 jobs, hundreds of families that did not get destroyed, a company that actually treats people with dignity. And I think maybe getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. How do you figure? Because it showed me who I had become. I had turned into someone who prioritized the company over everything. Over family, over friends, over my own values. I had convinced myself that loyalty meant accepting whatever Derek demanded. I had lost myself. And now I know who I am. I am someone who fights for what is right even when it is hard. I am someone who protects people who cannot protect themselves. I am someone who refuses to let bullies win. She smiled. I am your sister who finally has time for family dinners. We clinked our wine glasses. Below us, the city lights spread out in all directions. Somewhere out there were 300 people who still had jobs because I refused to give up. Somewhere out there were families that were not destroyed by corporate greed. Derek was awaiting trial. His lawyers kept filing motions, but the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple former board members had turned state's evidence. The forensic accountants had traced everything. He was facing serious prison time. Part of me felt bad for him. We had built that company together once. But he had made his choices. He chose greed over integrity. He chose personal profit over people's lives. He chose to destroy rather than build. I chose differently. My phone buzzed. It was Richard Hayworth. Our first joint product under the licensing agreement had just received FDA approval. He wanted to celebrate. This was the approval Derek had lied about, the one that did not actually exist. But now, 6 months later, working together honestly and openly, we had achieved it for real. I texted back that I would be there. Then I put my phone down and just sat with Lisa watching the sunset. For the first time in 18 years, I was not thinking about work. I was not worrying about deadlines or product launches or quarterly numbers. I was just being present with my sister. That is what I had learned. Success is not about sacrificing everything for a job that does not value you. Success is about knowing your worth. It is about fighting for what matters. It is about building something real instead of chasing empty numbers. It is about being the kind of person who stands up instead of staying down. Getting fired was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of discovering what I was really capable of. It was the beginning of understanding that my value does not come from a company or a title or a paycheck. It comes from my integrity. It comes from my willingness to fight for others. It comes from refusing to accept injustice just because fighting it is hard. Derek tried to erase me. Instead, he freed me. He freed me to become who I was always meant to be. Not just a good employee, not just a hard worker, but a leader who actually leads. A fighter who actually fights. A person who chooses integrity over comfort every single time. And that, I realized, was worth more than any merger deal could ever be. As I sat there with Lisa watching the city lights twinkle below us, I thought about everyone who had supported me. Harold and Thomas, who worked pro bono. Jennifer, who risked everything to expose the truth. Richard, who chose to do the right thing, even when it complicated his business deal. Gregory, who voted to remove Derek despite their long relationship. But most of all, I thought about the 300 employees who still had jobs, who still had health care for their families, who still had stability and security. They would never know how close they came to losing everything. They would never know about the jail cell or the frozen bank accounts or the $5 million settlement offer I almost took. And that was okay. They did not need to know. They just needed to know that someone had fought for them, that when it mattered most, someone chose people over profit, someone chose justice over convenience, someone refused to stay down. I had been that someone, and I would be again whenever necessary, because that is what real leadership means, not the corner office or the executive title or the stock options. Real leadership means standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. It means fighting battles that seem impossible. It means refusing to accept that injustice is just the way things are. Derek taught me what kind of leader not to be. He taught me that all the success in the world means nothing if you achieve it by betraying people who trusted you. He taught me that being fired can be a gift if it shows you who you really are. And I learned. I learned that I am stronger than I thought. I learned that integrity matters more than money. I learned that family is more important than any job. I learned that sometimes losing everything is just the first step to finding what truly matters. So here is my question for you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you ever had to choose between doing what is easy and doing what is right? When you faced that choice, what did you decide? Leave a comment and share your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in the hardest moments. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to fight back even when everyone tells you to stay down. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your worth is not determined by who fires you or who betrays you. Your worth comes from who you choose to be when everything is on the line. Choose to be someone who fights. Choose to be someone who stands up. Choose to be someone who refuses to let injustice win. And remember, sometimes the end is just the beginning of discovering what you are truly capable of.